The next step is to sort out what are the strategic objectives that you want to include in your strategy model. Now, it's important to note that we really do recommend that you only use strategic objectives which have already been documented somewhere in your organization. You see, if you begin pulling them out of your top of mind thinking, you're actually opening yourself up for a new strategic planning conversation. And that's going to delay things with a scorecard and actually not necessarily offer any benefit. Why do I say that? Well, some of the initial research we did on the scorecards back in the late 80s indicated that over 80% of strategies fail. And they fail not because they're not excellent, they fail because they're not executed. In other words, the broken part of strategy is not coming up with a new one, but executing the strategy that you already have. The corollary to that is there's a greater than 80% chance that you don't know if your existing strategy is correct or not. So we strongly urge you to only use what's already written down. That said, some organizations have nothing written down, and this activity will be to tease it out of your leadership's minds and some research of what they think is important. Again, we're going to use the Schoolhouse Montessori example merely because it's a well-documented example from the web. So we're going to use this form, which you can also download from our site. And you'll see here what we're going to do is cover off the most common categories of strategic objectives from each of the perspectives. We covered this off earlier in one of the IDEA webinars. So, for example, for increasing revenues, if we go back to the customer sheet that we filled in, we'll see that one of our core customers is the corporate Montessori group. And of course, what they want is excellence in brand support. And they're pretty critical, 15%. So we're going to say their rating is critical. And we're going to put in an objective that, based on the documented strategy, something like financially sound growth. So again, you'll see we're taking the written strategy and just frisking it for components for the strategy model. If we take a look at making better use of our assets, maybe that's not as important of an objective. And there's nothing about reducing our costs at all in our strategy. We might take a look at brand recognition and think that's important. And again, from what we saw with the customer profile sheet, something like enhancing the Montessori curriculum or furthering the brand. Most of these words have been extracted from their website as they have conversations about each of these objectives that they've obviously well thought out. So from this, what we've been able to do is to identify which are my critical objectives and what are ideas that we've already developed. Now, one of the benefits of taking these ideas which have already been developed is as you use them, you're gaining the acceptance of that entire team that spent those weeks and months coming up with those ideas in the first place. So you want to try to keep the phrasing the same as what they have in their source documents, again, so the linkage is clear and you're not trying to introduce a new concept into the organization.